Hello, everyone, and thank you very much for the introduction. We're excited to be here. I'm Dawn Bikowski. This is Erin O'Reilly. We're coming to you from the Defense Language Institute Foreign Language Center at the Presidio of Monterey. We'll probably call it DLI or DLIFLC. And we're going to share with you the experience that we've had over the last couple of years, really, looking at program reviews and accreditations, getting that buy-in, strengthening outcomes, and accountability. First, a quick little disclaimer from the US government. We are part of the US government, so this presentation does not include any contents that are the official views of DLIFLC or of the US Army. So what we're going to do today is give a little bit of a background. What is DLI? Kind of what are the processes, the challenges that we encountered? And then we're going to go through what the process was to overcome some of those challenges, and then also where we look to move in the future. Some of the situations we have here obviously will be unique as a military institution, but many of these things, I think, are really universal across many of our contexts. If you have any questions at any time, please feel free to put those into the chat. Also, if you want to raise your hand and say anything, that's fine as well. So who are we at DLI? We are part of the Department of Defense, the US Army, located in Monterey. We teach foreign languages and culture related to foreign languages. That's all we teach. The degrees we give are 2-year and 4-year degrees. All of our students are uniformed military service members. We have about 2,500 of those students. They come from across different military branches. Our faculty numbers, we have roughly 1,500 faculty members, full-time faculty teaching languages. And we have 2 types of accreditation. So we have to serve both of those masters, I guess. We're part of ACCJC, and then we're also part of the Army accreditation process as well. So we have to follow all of those regulations. We're in many ways a bootstrapping liberal arts college, in fact, figuring things out as we go, very heavily, though, guided by our mission. We are heavily mission-driven, so our values tie in with the Institute's vision, which is to generate and sustain warrior linguists throughout their military journey from apprentice to master. So that kind of gives a sense of who we are. Now, what our focus of the conversation of today is program reviews, right? So how many of you have ever been involved with program reviews? Raise your hand if you, oh, we're having technical challenges here. I can see. Hold on, we're going to have a quick here. Are the slides advancing, Erin? I think she's trying to get it back up again. While Erin is trying to get the slides back up, I'm gonna keep it going here. So how many of you have been involved with program reviews at your college? And if you have been involved with program reviews, kind of like what are some adjectives that you would use to describe those programs, that process, or kind of the experience, whether you in whatever capacity you're involved with? Tedious, okay. Informative, oh, I like that one. Informative is good. That's a very proactive, positive spin to things. What other kinds of adjectives would you use? Revealing, oh, now this one I like. I think if you're paying attention to the process, it should be revealing. Hopefully there are not too many surprises at the program review stage, but in reality, that is something that happens. And I think that's something we're always, anybody is trying to avoid having too many surprises. Boring, yeah, it can be tedious and boring. I hope that they are informative. I like to really see program reviews as an opportunity to drive change. So basically at DLI, what we were encountering was that we had a past process we needed to move into the future and develop a new process. And we had a lot of static issues with continuity and things like that. And when the earlier cycle started of accreditation, we needed to start to provide evidence, actual evidence of what we said that we were doing, right? That required us to reflect on our effectiveness of our practice and also, showcase that we were continuously thinking about this. And that was in fact revealing, and that was where we found ourselves in terms of trying to make sure that everything was, that we were in fact doing what we needed to be doing. Quick question. Is everyone seeing the slides? I'm not seeing the slides. Are you all seeing the slides?
Hey,
No?
Don, I'm so sorry. My computer just shut down. Give me 2 seconds.
Okay.
We are going to make this work.
Yeah, this government computers are, this sometimes happens. So bear with us. I'm going to keep rolling along if everyone doesn't mind. I'm going to say a little bit about the process that we have had here at DLI. This is basically a case study. So every 3 years, we do program reviews at DLI. And in those 3 years, every language program, and we have roughly, I think, 10 languages, every language must review their program metrics and find trends within those metrics. Also present the information to a group of people who I'll talk about in a minute who that is, with the slides and a time for question and answer. And then there's an open faculty forum, and that is for all faculty of the language or department. Anyone actually is invited. And then also senior leadership is also invited to that presentation. There's a written report that is submitted after the presentation. And then there's also, that is all reviewed, and the language program is given feedback based on a rubric that we have. Now, the goals of this process are great, thank you, the slides are back up. So the goals of this process are for analysis to occur, to guide decision-making and meet the mission, which I mentioned earlier. And then also for resourcing priorities. So, where are we going to put our resources, time, also, money. Also to promote dialogue and reflection among our faculty and leadership teams. This was a large part of it. And complying with accreditation requirements. So this is kind of the goal for those. And then when it comes to evidence-based accreditation and reviews, we're looking at what are the opportunities. I mentioned in the last slide, I see things like program reviews or accreditation as a real opportunity. We call it here a forcing function, meaning this is something that requires certain positive actions to happen, right? So we really have to make some necessary changes. We're forced to because of the process. Also, another opportunity, of course, is the professional development of faculty and leadership and the power of reflection and admitting. So we're not surprised at the program review stage, admitting some things that we can work on without having any shame or, challenges related to that. In terms of evidence, it's simply not enough to say we did it. We need to make sure we have an understanding of what counts as evidence and how we can gather that in a systematic way. What makes something, if something is anecdotal, just happening in a few little pockets, is that enough versus across the language program? I'm assuming these are similar types of things that occur where you are as well. And being able to iterate so that these reviews allow the process to keep occurring and we have other internal processes to make sure we continuously reflect on those realities. But it can be challenging to keep everyone going in the same direction. Every organization is complex and we have our complexities as well. So what are some of the challenges that we face? DLI does have a potential to be a showcase culture, meaning people are so proud of what they've done, and really there are fantastic achievements occurring. And so they're so proud of what they've done, but at the same time, we have to admit when we need a few extra things. And so being a showcase culture really means that we need to make sure we focus more on the full picture and not just on the parts we're particularly proud of. Also, another challenge is what the content needs to match, right? There can be a mismatch between the contents and the needs, right, of the program review. So we want those things to be aligned. Another challenge can be with the data literacy skills of faculty and staff and leadership. For example, qualitative anecdotal data versus quantitative factual data. What are the ones that we're going to be including, and to what degree in our program reviews? The ability to really focus in on key information. Institutions all go through these time periods where sometimes this priority is given more importance, and then it moves to a different priority. That happens here too. And so as priorities shift around, it can be confusing for faculty to what are we focusing on now? So being able to identify key information and keeping on the same page. And then trends within that key information. What do we expect to see beyond the individual classroom level, moving into the larger picture? Cherry picking data, favorable data only, again, related to that showcase culture. And then, being able to really have data-informed solutions. So to have solutions and say, these solutions are going to be really what we're going to focus on. And then for inadequate technology can also be a challenge that we have as well. So what out of these 5 things, did we lose our slides again? Did we lose our slides again? Can everybody see the slides?
No, can't see them.
Okay. Well, all right. All right, thanks. So I gave you 5 different things. Qualitative versus quantitative factual data is one challenge. And I'm going to ask you, which one of these challenges do you encounter most often? Okay. Number 1 is the difference between quantitative and qualitative data among your faculty. Number 2 is being able to identify key information. Number 3 is being able to identify trends. Number 4 is cherry picking data. And number 5 is data-informed solutions. Anybody have any of those that are particularly challenging at your institution? These were the challenges we faced. Maybe all of the above. Trends. Yeah, trends can be hard to, and you also have to have the dashboards and the ability, that was the other technology thing that we faced, and we're going to talk about as well, as having the technology to bring in as well to help faculty and leadership be able to focus. Data-informed solutions. Yeah. So I see that's kind of consistent across the board. So while the slides are still reappearing, I'll say a little bit about the former process that we have moving into the current process. The former process had a number of strengths, and really the main 2 were that we did have strong collaboration with faculty, and we had a real willingness to try hard, and that's fantastic. That means a lot. That the willingness to try and meet the goals and work together is important. Weaknesses, we had some environmental factors related to access of data, data silos, inconsistency with data sets. We had some weaknesses with behavioral factors related to inconsistency with those interpretations and comparisons. We do require comparisons across language programs based on the metrics that we set here at the institution for graduation rates and expectations, very quantitative. And it used to be some of those comparisons couldn't be done effectively because they was really inconsistent. And we also had some purpose misalignment where some of the people were seeing these program reviews as, again, being a showcase and performative, not being reflective and really guiding future decision making. And then finally, we had some weaknesses with personal factors, just in terms of data relevance, what's relevant at the classroom level and at the big picture, institutional level, and everything in between, and that identification of resourcing needs. Everyone thinks their particular needs are always the most important, right? So the previous program review framework didn't really provide any guidance around a data hierarchy or prioritization for the faculty and leadership to focus on when it came to known gaps areas to support the identification of resourcing needs. So that was another challenge. I'm going to take a quick break here and ask Erin. Oh, it looks like she started screen sharing again. Great. So what we realized when it was a time for a change, and our problem statement was that we really lacked the data and skills to conduct beneficial reviews. But at the same time, and that was based on an internal review that we did back in 2017. So this process has been going on in a while. And that was both to conduct a robust analysis and then an evaluation. And we needed to really ensure that that fully benefited the review process. So our goal was to integrate those processes with a stakeholder buy-in is crucial to strengthen outcomes and accountability. So we ended up revising the long-standing program review process. We got that stakeholder input, and we also got staff support, which we're going to talk about as well, not just faculty, but staff for that technology side, in an effort to develop those data literacy skills, and then with mid-level managers across, our group here. Okay. So I'm going to pass this off to Erin, who's been fearlessly working in the background with slides. We're hoping for the best. Again, apologies. This sometimes happens, privacy with government computers can be, it can be challenging sometimes outside of the network. Inside of the network, it usually is less challenging. So Erin O'Reilly is our Quality Assurance Officer / ALO, and I'm going to pass it off to her to talk about our new process.
Hey, Dawn, and if I could ask a favor, if you could somehow get backups, because for whatever reason, my computer's having a Friday and it's good, and then it's shutting down. So I'm not sure what the system is, but we love a backup.
I'm going to hop over then onto my personal computer. Okay. And I'm going to re-enter. Okay.
Thank you so much. So let's talk about who our stakeholders are and how we made this process work. The first one is obviously myself. I'm our accreditation liaison officer. I'm also the compliance and regulatory person. So if somebody wants to know if they can do something, they usually call my office. It's also a position that requires the aggregation of data and evidence and writing reports. So I'm very keen on knowing what's going on across our colleges. Then we have Dawn. This is our Office of Standardization and Academic Excellence, or we call them OSAE. And this is who I would term our assessment experts in our subject matter. So this is the office that knows methodology, teaching, sequencing, and outcomes for foreign language. We also have our Director of Academic Affairs. So these are the individuals that run our data dashboards. And then some of our senior administrators, the Associate Provost for Undergraduate Education, who wants to be able to look across the colleges and programs and see trends. And then a Dean's Council representative who worked with some of their faculty in gathering feedback and input in the process. This team composition may look similar or slightly different from your context in your college, but for us, it really makes sense. These are people who needed information and were going to be involved in the process. All right, so what data did we look at? We did include a lot of quantitative data, but also some qualitative data as well. We are on a 3-year accreditation cycle for the Army, 8-year for our civilian accreditor, our regional accreditor. So at a minimum, we're looking at aggregates of 3-year data. We also look at single years to report year 1, 2, and 3 to see if there's major changes. For example, COVID was a big asterisk in all of our data sets. We compare programs. So how is Spanish in one location doing in another location? How are the different levels doing? And that's part of our civilian and regional accreditation. We look at staffing levels and budget for that. We look at major curricular changes and successes over that 3-year period. And then importantly, student learning evidence, outcomes data, outcomes at the class level, outcomes at the semester level, and then our terminal learning objectives as well. And they take, our service members take a very intensive exit exam that will qualify them for their follow-on military assignments. So that's one of the main measures we use of student learning at the end of the program. And then student feedback. We aggregate student feedback from their end of course surveys. Let's keep moving forward. So how do we make this work? We had 2 significant process changes. The first one was updating our technology tools. We do not, I'm sure many of you do have contracts perhaps with dashboard purveyors. We do not have that. Everything is homegrown because we're a small liberal arts college. And the military isn't really designed to offer training in a college-like setting. So this is something that we had to develop on our own. Am I frozen? No, okay, I can still see some, thank you. I just want to keep going. My computer's starting to hum, so I'm a little concerned. So one of the things, actually, I'm gonna stop sharing before it freezes. Let's hope that helps a little bit. And I'll just keep talking. But please don't. Thank you, Dawn. And if I freeze, it's all on you, my fearless colleague. Thank you so much. All right, so the first thing we had to do was update technology. And one of the tools that we did have was access to Microsoft Office Suite. And for us, that would be Power BI. And I'm sure you've seen evidence of Power BI in different formats across media, in perhaps your own colleges as well. So that's what we leveraged. And we teamed up with our academic affairs office, and they're the ones that have access to our outcomes data and student metrics. And so with Power BI, we were able to go in and extract, transform, and load data from different data sets in multiple different formats and build those semantic models that were interactive and or static. And filter that down to the level that, that could be useful for our administrators. And we actually provided 2 sets of data. We provided data that the administrators would be required to share with their faculty in a public forum. So every faculty member would be seeing similar data about their programs across the colleges and the institute. And then there was also data sets that we provided that offered deeper granularity into their programs and more information, but weren't necessarily going to be helpful for all of the schools to look at. So there is the analysis reflection data sets and then the presentation data sets. But providing more data isn't always helpful, especially when we talk about growing data literacy skills with our constituents. And so that brings us to our second main step, if we could go on. And this is building data literacy. And it's one of the things that the sociocognitive theory talks about is if we build systems and we have the environment that will support behavioral changes, then we can build efficacy in the individual and help them grow those skills. So it was really incumbent on us, and how do we create the environment where we can get our administrators and our faculty thinking critically about outcomes. And this is across the board. This is a huge step for us. And one of the main things that we started out with was a step-by-step guide that I co-developed with the feedback from our associate provost and our dean representative and his academic team and our academic affairs office. And in that guide, it provided a scope of program reviews and the purpose of self-reflection, and it's to be used for their strategic decision-making, how to use the reports and dashboards that we were giving them, how to define common reporting metrics that all of the programs had access to, how to interpret that data. And we really did dive deep into the data interpretation with guiding questions. So if you see an arrow going this direction, it might mean this. If you see a gap in data here, you might want to look at this. Really helping guide that, that conversation and critical thinking around outcomes data. And we also put in the requirements that they needed to be looking at the data for strategic planning, not just today, but out into the future. So really having the outcomes drive that conversation across our institute. All right, so let's look at an example of what a dashboard page might be. This will be familiar for those who have dashboards or look similar in some flavor. The specifics aren't important. What I do want to call out are two things. The first arrow that goes up to the top is that we included callouts. So these are automated callouts in changes to data. So these are narrative commentary about changes in the data over that 3-year period. And the reason we did that is that it helps the administrators focus their attention and reduce some of that cognitive load to data interpretation. So that could start the dialogue with their teams and what they were seeing in their outcomes metrics. So for example, I think the first one says the course production rates perhaps improved by 25%. So the outcomes metrics increase. So what did they change that would have led to that increase or decrease? And having that dialogue. The data is just data. The interpretation still the responsibility and incumbent on the administrators. And then the bottom arrow, you'll see a series of bar charts. All of those are interactive, and they could click on any of those colors or any of those data points and dive deeper into the data, or even go over to an Excel sheet where they can manipulate it themselves and see what was going on. Now, it looks clean and beautiful right now, but every single piece of this visualization was a conversation between us and the stakeholders. What color, what comparison, what time frame. So it really was the end user driving the visualization. Yes, there were regulatory stuff that I was looking at. And yes, there were constraints from the data administrators, but really this is for them. It's the tool for them to use. All right, let's keep going. So let's talk about the process timeline. When we talk about program reviews, it really needs to be a conversation that's ongoing within the college and the program. In the past, they would have a deadline. Your program reviews due in June of next year, and they would wait until June 15th to start the program review. So we backwards planned time for critical thinking, time for support, and time for planning. So week 1, everyone gets contacted by my office, and we give them the guide. We give them links to their data dashboards, and we ask the dean to assign someone to work with my office. I then support that individual, give them an orientation, hand them over templates, lots of templates. Can't overemphasize the importance of templates to streamline their work. And then they go back to their colleges, to their programs, and form that working group to start that dialogue. Works weeks 3, 6, and 7. This is where Dawn's office comes into play. This is where your SME experts are. These are the individuals who have experience in assessment and outcomes and looking at data and helping them work through this process, because it's the first time they're exposed to large quantities of data. This was important. It also created a safe space for our mid-level administrators to start asking questions, to admit maybe they didn't know how to work with the data or the dashboards. And so this was a space for them to explore data safely and lean into the fact that all programs are in an iteration of their evolution. They are at a point in time. We don't have to be perfect. This is data. What are we going to do with it moving forward? How are we going to improve and continue that cycle of improvement? We also did a review period where the dean had to call off, sign off on what the what the presentation was going to be to the faculty. And then there was a open faculty forum where they could talk about their findings in their program review. So that was everyone in the college, senior administrators, everyone was invited to attend. And then because we still have a little bit of a residual interest in being a showcase culture, they really wanted feedback from my office. How well did we do, right? And so instead of it being qualitative, you did excellent, we used a rubric. How realistic were their strategic goals? Were they linked to the outcomes? Are they realistic in terms of resourcing requests? And so that was a rubric that we sent back to them with a memo saying, thank you very much. Here's the next step for your review. So this is the process, and it is intentionally 3 months long. Week 1 to week 8 are those first 2 months, and then getting feedback back to them and any final steps. All right, let's move on. And again, this is our 3-year review process. I won't spend much time here. One of the things that I did do is I put in an 18-month check-in. So I don't know how it is at your colleges, but it tends to be, we do a program review, and then we have no follow-up until the next program review. And one of the challenges, and 3 years is actually a very quick cycle if you look at program reviews in other institutions. But one of the challenges that we have is significant administrative turnover, especially at that dean level and above. So individuals who may be responsible for overseeing action plans or improvement plans. So putting an 18-month check-in allowed those planning agendas to be resurfaced with the administrators if there's turnover. It also helps keep the programs accountable for their planning priorities. And then the last thing it did, which I think is equally as important, given that landscapes change, institutional strategic visions and plans change, provosts and chancellors change, is that they allow us to capture changing priorities in a program. So this could be consolidation, downsizing, growth. It could be standing up a new program or new minor or major. So it allowed them to capture that change and document it so that we knew going forward that it was something that they were tracking. All right, next slide. Let's talk about where we are now. The new reviews are standardized, and they really allow our administrators to capture and assess the unique challenges of a program. Not all programs are in the same place. For example, if a program's growing, they should be focused on faculty development, onboarding, professional development support, student support, targeting those individuals that are new to the college. Established programs, we found that they were fine-tuning their assessment and curricular sequence and outcomes mapping. So even though the data was the same, it was telling very different stories, which was useful for the administrators and resourcing decisions. It was also an opportunity for a larger culture shift. We were looking at the data and asking hard questions about ourselves and moving from a performative program review process to something that allowed for meaningful reflection. And this led to open forums and conversations with the faculty and faculty buy-in and understanding of where they needed to go, where their strengths and where their potential gaps were. It also importantly forced our administrators to begin that first tentative step, necessary first step into doing a deep dive into their quantitative and qualitative data. Next slide, please. So what are we doing next? We have the 18-month check-in report. We're going to be integrating data into that as well. It's perfunctory. It's not intended to be a huge burden on the programs, just a way to keep things alive. We are also looking at how we can adapt this process to other institutional procedures, other things that we do. How can we support our administrators to exploring data and outcomes and encourage deeper exploration? And then one of the things that I love, because it's all about me, not really, but I'd like to think it is, as an accreditation officer, is it allows me to lift out outcomes and evidence of improvement in student learning and put that into our reports for accreditation, for publicity, for community awareness of things that we're doing and we can celebrate and go forward with and really promote. And that's easy. I don't have to go back to the administrators and ask for evidence. It's all right there and easy for me to aggregate. Let's go. Next one, please. All right, high impact strategies. I think we had originally said 5 high impact strategies, but I kept coming up with more. So I'm putting 7 on here. You get 2 for free. Let's talk about how we do this. Boots on the ground. How do we get a community behind a significant process change? The first one is to pilot whatever you're doing. Work with one program closely and walk them through the changes, integrate their feedback. I cannot tell you how much time we spent talking about colors and lines and bar charts and circle charts. That's important to them. Spend time doing that. Number 2, champions. Identify champions across your campus to make this work. Who's curious? Who's an early adopter? What skills do you need to on the table to make this succeed? Lean on that team. It's not one person doing it. It is absolutely a team effort. Iterate. Gather feedback and incorporate it into the next round of reviews. Do this sooner rather than later, or you're going to forget. 3 years for us is a long time. Some of you are in 8-year cycles or 10-year cycles. That's a very long time. We've spent 6 years fine-tuning this process and really started to get what we think is momentum in the right direction this last iteration. And then evidence. Require evidence of changes, updates, and program evolution as a result of the review process. Bring these into your reports and promotional materials and streamline that whenever possible. And then guides. I love guides. Nobody ever reads the guide, but when they ask you questions, you can say, hey, did you read the guide? And then they'll go read the guide and they'll be, I'm good. Saves my time, saves them time. But guides create step-by-step instructions with FAQs and templates and reflection questions for the program administrators to work through. Get beyond the surface level data and start asking deeper questions. The more granular you can be here, the better you'll be in the going forward, because you can't assume a base knowledge. We really want to build those foundational skills. And then mentorship. This goes to Dawn's role. Expect to need to mentor faculty on data and scaffolding support, and find ways to make mentorship really work for your environment and your context. It will look different depending on your institution, but have that safe space to help build that data literacy and reflective learning culture in your faculty while they're doing their program reviews. And that goes to number 7, which is trust and collaboration. Set up time, build that into your timeline to create a safe space to walk through the statistics, walk through the quantitative and qualitative findings, allow them to ask questions, allow them to feel uncomfortable when they discover a gap. It's going to take time, and gaps are okay, and learning is okay. So build that space for trust and collaboration. All right, so I will ask before we go to the next and end slide for Q&A, I'll ask you one more question in the chat. Which of these 7 strategies is the most important to you and the assessment work that you do? Go ahead and put a 1 through 7. Which one speaks to you? I get lots of 7s. In piloting, absolutely. Iterating with feedback, it's incredibly important. We are learning culture. We need to embrace that for ourselves as well. Yes. All right. With that, I am done with my portion of the presentation. Donnie did a fabulous job with the deck, way better than I did with the presentation. Thank you so much for stepping in. I'm going to pause it and we can open it up for Q&A.
Erin, we already know we have one question that I want to make sure we ask you directly if you happen to know the answer to this one. which is, are we able to share the rubric that we have? Someone asked if that rubric can be
Yes,
shared.
absolutely. I'd be happy to do that. I actually, while we were going through this process, I looked at other colleges and universities and adapted one for our context. So I'd be happy to share that. You have my email address there. You can send me an email and I'd be happy to get that for you.
And the slides we'll be sharing on the website, which is indicated here as well. So I think you can get our slides as well in the website that's listed there. I think we're open for other questions. I didn't see other questions in the chat. Have we missed any?
Yes, excellent. This is very, very thorough, very very insightful, very revealing in many ways. But I tell you, probably most importantly, very systematic. You gave us really very, very good overview of the structure, how this is supposed to work, and I'm just very grateful. I really haven't seen a presentation that would go through the process step by step to the extent you did with the degree of detail you presented. So thank you very much. I'm really grateful for that. The question that I get a lot in those Friday talks is SLO assessment, right? So I did post it in the chat, and there is obviously others who are going to pitch in as well. What constitutes SLO assessment data? How do you assess student learning outcomes? If you could give us some examples, discuss the process. If there is assessment cycle or what, how do you assess course level outcomes versus program versus institutional learning outcomes, if there are any differences? And yeah, let's start with that if you don't mind.
Don, do you want to take that? You are standard 2 author. Oh, did I lose you, Don?
Oh, so now I've got people knocking on the door. They're painting the buildings. They're doing the things around here. I'm back. Okay, I'm sorry. What was the question?
No problem.
So, how do we differentiate between course level outcomes and program level outcomes and institutional level outcomes? And how do we track that? And I know that you were the author for level 2 for learning outcomes. So this is fresh in your mind. Do you want to talk to that one?
Yeah, I mean, this again relates highly to the stakeholders, and our outcomes at the end of the day here are very much driven. The structure we have is there's final tests, final tests in speaking, reading, and listening, and they have to pass those to actually graduate. Now, in order to get their additional degrees, like a BA or an essay, there are other associate's degree, there are other things classes they have to take, but to leave DLI and graduate, they have to pass these tests with a certain score. And so we work backwards from those types of outcomes, and we look at evidence that is specifically related to time periods and specific tests. Things are standardized when it comes to the tests that are given across different language programs, when they occur, and expectations for those tests. We have like a battery of kind of pre-tests telling us how close students are in their development to that final test. So those scores are used, they're standardized as well, the tests are, and they go through quite a bit with validity and reliability. I mean, there's classroom things too, though. So we have these kind of more lockstep processes, and then we have things that are more anecdotal to and more tailored to the particular language. You know, you've got languages like Persian Farsi and Arabic and Chinese Mandarin, which have a whole different writing system. And then you have ones like Spanish and French, which are a lot more familiar. So you're going to have different needs with those student and teaching populations. So some of that evidence has to do with processes that relate to their specific environment related to, we do a lot of supporting at-risk students earlier rather than later, trying to keep them going to the end. We don't want students to have to leave DLI. And that's a large part of the metrics that we have. So when it comes to that type of evidence, we have things related to what are your processes and demonstrate the student improvement for those processes within certain things. What do you find that you need? A lot of times this has to do with the types of interventions students have been given at a certain time? Did they receive the interventions according to our policies that they needed at the right time? Was the right kind of information documented, that they actually received the help they needed? This documentation at that more granular level then is really a lot related to teaching teams. We do team teaching here, and that can be challenging because it can feel like just documentation for the sake of documentation. No one's going to read this, but it actually is incredibly revealing, again, in terms not only of looking at it for accreditation or for program reviews, but like a member of the leadership team, the dean's office, can look and say, wait a minute, are we really varying our practices to support our at-risk students? Are we following up with them sufficiently? Students can fall through the cracks, but we have a lot of one-on-one. Our teacher to student ratio is really quite amazing. We have small class sizes. So I hope, does that answer your question, what you were looking for?
Yes, yes, this is fascinating. The follow-up question to this, again, it seems like you have a very well articulated assessment process of student learning outcomes. How does the SLO assessment data help you guide institutional improvement? So at what points do you actually learn, or what points do you pay attention to what it is that students are learning? And as a result, you do all those resource allocation requests and ask for support.
Erin, do you want to talk about that, or you want me to talk about that?
Sure, I'd be happy to talk about it, and then you can jump in if you have a different perspective or other experience. So we monitor outcomes for they go through a trimester, semester 1, semester 2, semester 3, and that constitutes their program. And at the beginning, well, throughout each trimester, we are tracking the student performance metrics on language exams, right? So a unit exam or a vocabulary test or whatever it happens to be. So we are tracking the students at the individual level and then at the program level. So when we come back in the program reviews, it's a forcing function that they have to do it every 3 years, but that doesn't mean that they're not going in sooner when they start to see the trends in the dashboard now through the live metrics that all students in semester 1 after unit 2 are having trouble with this learning outcome. Then that's a conversation for them to go back and look at that learning outcome and see how it's articulated in the curriculum and in instruction. So it's ongoing monitoring that they're doing. We are layering the program reviews on top of that to try and create the standard process and make sure that it's happening systematically. Does that answer your question?
Yes, absolutely.
I can build on that a little bit if you don't mind. Yeah.
Of course.
So to kind of expand on that, as Erin noted, we have 3 semesters, but languages are categorized on their difficulty. So unlike a typical university where a semester is, 14 or 15 weeks or whatever, here a semester changes depending on the language difficulty. So a semester in Spanish is shorter than a semester in, Japanese. Anyway, so every course has every time so the students are in a cohort and they're all together. They start together and that particular group of students graduates together. And midway through that process, each group of students with their teachers goes through a mid-course review. And these then feed into these program reviews. So midway through the process, the teachers have key data points related to what we talk about. They have to go back, look at, and report. And then this is their opportunity to make any changes for this particular group of students before it's too late. We don't want this to be only they've graduated, it's too late. The deans attend, the key stakeholders attend, and that's documented and sent in. And then there's also the after course review, which is then once the course is over, what changes need to be made perhaps to the curriculum or other factors as well. And this also feeds in. So these processes are intended to keep the data kind of relevant and key points where action needs to occur. So that was just to build on that.
Right, excellent. Thank you. Thank you for the follow-up. Ryan Smith is asking in the same vein. Data-informed solutions, right, are the largest struggle, and I think that his comment is not necessarily an aberration. What are the support systems? Do you have researchers helping you with this? Are there, who is doing what kind of a thing? If you don't mind elaborating on this, this is a challenge for all of us.
Right. This is your team of teams. These are the people that you need to identify on your campus to help drive this process forward, right? So one of the things that ACCJC, which is under WASC, did is they revised their standards and they really focused on outcomes evidence, which is go back to that forcing function. It forces us to look internally and say, what's evidence? What counts as evidence? Is one program doing something evidence? Or is this need to be across the board? And that's a conversation that is hard for us to talk about because often we have examples of excellence, but it's not populating across the board. So to go back to the question of who is working on this process, we had the accreditors come down and we just went through our on-site peer review this past spring. We had our accreditors coming down and we started looking at the program reviews to help drive evidence for that process. And we had Dawn's office. So these are your SMEs. These are your individuals who are very familiar with outcomes in your particular instructional field. So Dawn is foreign language, right? Which is what we do. That might be different if you're in chemistry or math or history, but having that expert in assessment and outcomes in the content that you're teaching is critically important. So I can say we need this types of evidence to meet our regulatory requirements for the Department of Education. What does that look like? Well, then I go to my data dashboard manager, our academic affairs, and we start looking at ways that we can make the data accessible to our administrators. So it was a significant lift on my office and the data manager to start conceptualizing what this process would look like. Once we had the framework, the basic framework, we brought in our assessment specialists, our SMEs in the subject matter, and we brought in our faculty representatives, our dean and one team to start iterating and looking at that process. So we didn't do everything at once, and it did take 6 years. This is not an overnight thing, and that's okay, because each time we got a little bit better, and the stakeholders had more and more buy-in. They were beginning to see the return on investment of the time and what we were trying to do.
And our associate provost of undergraduate education is very into data. And so he can request from the office that created that art tool, DAA, he can request from them different types of tools and dashboards, which he'll just pull up immediately and check to see how things are. We have graduations pretty much every week. And so he's pulling up, he's checking to see, comparing different things in live time very easily. So that really, I really can't overemphasize the technology component. You can't expect leadership to wade through piles and piles of things. This has made things clear and apparent in a way that wasn't available before.
Very nice. Excellent. Thank you again for the details. And I just would like to follow up on what Christy Lindsay said in her comment in the chat. You have shared those beautiful visualizations, those infographics. I'm sure they are very, very telling. They at first glance and you get the whole story. Very, very thorough work. How do you make it work? How do you develop those? Again, I'm sure it's a team effort in terms of data analysis and what needs to go there. Again, do you have a designer or how does it work?
Right. So that goes back to our data manager. We have key individuals on the campus that are trained in Power BI. And then as someone deeply invested in assessment, I love to snoop around on other colleges' websites and look at how they're visualizing data and what they're presenting and how they're presenting it and how you can click through it. And then I would go back to the data manager, the programmer, and say, hey, can we do this? And then there would be a mock-up. This wasn't an intensive workload because we were just doing drafts. There would be a mock-up. And then once we had that general outline of this is the type of thing we're looking for, we would go to the administrators and say, this is what we're looking at. Give us your feedback. And then they would say, we want the arrow going this way, or we want this to be a bar chart, or this is too much information, or this is duplicative. And so that it was a dialogue. It took us probably the better part of 1.5 years to fine tune the dashboard. And that's because it's not an off-the-shelf product. It's everything was designed internally. Yep. Oh, one back, forward.
I want to just say that this is the tool, that Microsoft tool, Power BI, is the tool that was used in our DAA office. We kind of just had a champion, Aaron, correct me if I'm wrong, who just wanted to learn it and jumped right in. One of those innovators who's just like, well, this is kind of cool. Should we try this? And has really devoted himself and really gone with it. So without, so that's the tool, and it's free because we already subscribe to the big Microsoft universe. And when we're putting stuff over here, there, and everywhere, it can all populate in, but I'll go back to the one that shows the picture. Yeah.
And how do you disseminate this information? Do you have specific meetings on program review, how it all wraps up at the end of the day so that everybody knows where they are?
That's a beautiful question. And I put the answer to that in the guide because this is important. Everything needs to be in a guide. So not only did it outline who needed to be in attendance for a public forum, who the invitation should go to, it outlined what types of conversations you probably want to be having with your faculty on the program review. It also stipulates at the end of the program review that all of this information needs to be shared with the faculty so that they have it and can look at it as well. And we are trying to move away from a culture of data silos to data democracy of how can we talk about data, how can we identify challenges that we're facing as an institution, and more importantly, how can we find creative solutions and how can we share winning strategies? Because evidence isn't excellence in one college, evidence is all of this is a best practice in how we move forward.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you so much. Again, this is very, very thorough, very, very insightful. I really appreciate your sharing. So again, we are going to make all these materials available if that's okay with you. The recording is going to be posted on the coach's YouTube channel as well. So we have some venues that where we can share this great presentation. So thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate your expertise. Dawn, please.
Yeah, can I just say one thing because I see one other question. Aaron, there's a question here if we can share the slows. And if should they reach out to us?
Absolutely. Yeah. We are accredited, so those are on our website. They're a little challenging to find, but reach out and we can share them with you.